Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. My name is Juliet. Juliet was from Mugambwa. I'm one of the team that is responsible for delivering the Africa Dialogue Series 2025. We welcome you to this important youth stage that will be articulating, issues related to building the future, healing and reparations towards socio-economic justice for Africans and people of African descent. Today, we gather in the spirit of solidarity, remembrance of forward vision, to reflect the historical injustices and collectively advance the urgent agenda on reparation, reparatory justice, inclusive development, and transformative healing. The dialogue comes at a time when the momentum is growing across Africa and the diaspora to reimagine global systems and challenges the legacy of colonialism, enslavement, and systemic exclusion. The context today for us is to see in the past 2 weeks, we have been amplifying the African Union theme of the year, which is on justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations for a whole month. But the first week of the month, we covered the historical part of we learned from the past. Week second was understanding the future. And today, we are here to look at building the future, because this is like a chain that we have been looking at to be able to articulate the grounding, which is the history of colonialism and transatlantic trade, bringing to the fore where we are today as understanding the present, and then looking at the future, which is the how. And today's conversation, as I had alluded to, we would like to hear from all of you, this impressive panel, as well as the audience, on how. The how is how we move forward collectively to address these issues. You, the young people, you have the energy and the passion, as well as innovation and creativity. This is where we are anchoring the development for African people of African descent. Looking forward to the reflections that will come from today's dialogue. We must not only name the harm, but not stop there. We must focus on how to build an inclusive and sustainable future for all. With those few words, allow me to introduce our director, OSA's director, Mr. Jean-Paul Adam, the Director of Policy Monitoring and Advocacy, who give us the opening remarks. And as Matilda mentioned to you already, he's going to speak in French to keep in check the UN multilingualism as well. And we are also aware that, the diversity in the diaspora, Africans and people of African descent, transcends all languages, in particular French, English, and others. Jean-Paul, over to you.
Merci beaucoup, Juliette, et bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bon après-midi, bonsoir. Premièrement, permettez-moi de dire, pas seulement au plan professionnel, en tant que mon rôle, mais aussi sur le plan personnel, étant ressortissant des Seychelles, comment c'est un plaisir de pouvoir aborder ce sujet avec vous, parce que cela a une très grande importance pour le continent africain, mais aussi, je dirais, pour les espaces insulaires dont sont mes origines. Dans cette conversation aujourd'hui, nous vous invitons à réimaginer l'avenir de l'Afrique. Comment construire un avenir inclusif tout en reconnaissant et en abordant le fardeau de l'histoire de l'esclavage et du colonialisme qui pèse sur le continent. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue au nom de la secrétaire générale adjointe Cristina Duarte à cette discussion organisée par les jeunes sur le thème « Construire l'avenir, guérison et réparation pour une justice socio-économique pour les Africains et les personnes d'ascendance africaine ». Cette initiative s'inscrit dans notre réflexion plus large autour du thème de l'Union africaine pour l'année 2025, justice pour les Africains et les personnes d'ascendance africaine, notamment à travers les réparations. Nous sommes à un moment charnière de l'histoire. Il est temps d'examiner nos institutions. Sont-elles adaptées à leur mission? Le moment que nous vivons exige non seulement une réflexion, mais aussi une action audacieuse et transformatrice. Il est essentiel d'aborder la justice réparatrice à travers le regard des jeunes. Les fardeaux du passé doivent servir à éclairer et à renforcer ceux qui façonnent l'avenir. Alors que nous nous préparons à lancer un appel à l'action autour du thème de l'année, nous cherchons à définir la justice réparatrice dans une perspective tournée vers l'avenir, à travers un cadre de développement réparateur. Un cadre qui s'attaque aux héritages persistants de l'esclavage, du colonialisme et du racisme systémique. Je saisis cette occasion pour remercier nos partenaires qui ont contribué à enrichir notre compréhension de ces enjeux dans l'esprit d'un appel mondial à la justice qui dépasse les frontières de l'Afrique. Notre travail a réuni la Commission de l'Union africaine, le Fonds des Nations unies pour la population, la Commission économique des Nations unies pour l'Afrique et le secrétariat de la CARICOM. Nous cherchons à nous appuyer sur le plan en 10 points de la CARICOM, tout en abordant les inégalités intégrées dans le système multilatéral mondial et l'architecture financière internationale. Voici quelques priorités d'action à considérer. Premièrement, une représentation accrue des nations africaines et caribéennes dans les institutions de gouvernance mondiale. Deuxièmement, la justice en matière de dette, y compris l'annulation et la restructuration selon les mécanismes tenant compte des injustices historiques, mais surtout en cassant le lien structurel entre l'accroissement de la dette en Afrique et le modèle économique de l'extraction des ressources pour l'exportation sans investissement dans les chaînes de valeur. Troisièmement, des systèmes commerciaux équitables qui autonomisent plutôt que n'exploitent. Et quatrièmement, un financement climatique équitable qui reconnaît les charges disproportionnées supportées par les pays en développement, en particulier les communautés africaines et caribéennes, et qui respecte les principes du pollueur-payeur et des responsabilités communes mais différenciées. Ensuite, un renforcement de la mobilisation des ressources nationales pour réduire la dépendance et renforcer la souveraineté. Finalement, point essentiel, les réparations culturelles, en assurant le retour des artefacts africains et du patrimoine culturel à leur terre d'origine, tout en intégrant l'histoire riche et diversifiée de l'Afrique dans les systèmes éducatifs nationaux et mondiaux. Ce ne sont pas des idéaux abstraits. Ce sont des étapes concrètes vers la restauration de la dignité, de la souveraineté et des opportunités. Cette conversation est également profondément intergénérationnelle. Les jeunes, qui constituent la majorité de la population africaine, ne sont pas seulement les leaders de demain, ils sont les acteurs du changement d'aujourd'hui. Leur activisme, leur innovation et leur vision redéfinissent déjà les récits et exigent des comptes. Leurs voix doivent être au cœur de l'élaboration des politiques réparatrices et du développement inclusif. La dividende démographique de l'Afrique, une population jeune, dynamique et de plus en plus instruite, représente une opportunité sans précédent. S'il est exploité par des investissements dans l'éducation, la santé et l'emploi décent, il peut alimenter un nouveau siècle africain. Un siècle défini non par la dépendance, mais par le leadership, la créativité et l'influence mondiale. Le webinaire d'aujourd'hui est un espace pour approfondir notre compréhension, pour écouter et apprendre les uns des autres et pour explorer comment nous pouvons collectivement faire avancer cet agenda. C'est aussi un moment pour réaffirmer notre engagement commun en faveur de la justice, non pas comme un acte ponctuel, mais comme un processus continu de guérison, de réparation et de transformation. Rappelons-nous, la justice réparatrice ne consiste pas à désigner des coupables. Elle vise à rétablir l'équilibre. Il s'agit de reconnaître le passé, d'affronter le présent et de construire un avenir fondé sur l'équité, la dignité et le respect mutuel. Merci de contribuer à l'appel à l'action. Engageons ensemble cette conversation essentielle avec courage, compassion et une vision partagée d'un monde juste et inclusif. Merci beaucoup. Et place aux jeunes. So over to you, moderator.
Thank you so much for that submission. And indeed, it's a very powerful submission. My name is Andros Osamba. I'm the founder of Uzalendo Africa, a Pan-African organization based in Mombasa, but I'm also the lead policy campaign and advocacy at Africans Rising. Africans Rising is a Pan-African movement based in the Gambia, but then we're present in all African countries and the diaspora. And I work on reparation campaigns and borderless Africa. Once again, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you and to say good morning, good afternoon, bonjour à tous, salam alaikum, hamjambo, whichever language you speak, and to welcome you to this important webinar. It is such a beautiful day to be African, as an Kenyan living, as an African living in Kenya, but most likely it's such a beautiful year to be African, because the African Union declared this year as the year for reparation, and advancing justice through reparations. And this presents an opportunity for us. And I would like to echo the sentiments of our first keynote address when he talked about the multilateral global financial architecture and how there's so much need to review it. And for me, as a young person living in Kenya, then this conversation is very close to my heart. And I'm excited to hear from all of you. Please feel free to tell us where you're connecting from in the chat box, and there'll be a lot of opportunities where you can share the kind of work that you're doing. And we're really excited to host you. My co-moderator and I, feel free to reach to us. And I am going to pass it to my co-moderator to introduce herself and also introduce our first speaker. You're welcome.
Yeah, welcome everyone. I am Ana Hurtado, but I prefer to be called Gana. I'm from Mexico, and I'm very excited to be in this space with all of you. And as a from Mexican woman, I consider this space of dialogue very important, because in some countries the conversation about reparation is not common, is not in the public agenda. So it's very important to take action, because when we talk about reparation, we are talking about the justice, the racial justice. Racial justice is for everyone. So welcome everyone again, and I'm happy to be with all of you. So maybe we can ask some question general for all, and then we can pick up some of you and take a dialogue with each one. For the time, I think that we can write in the message to take time, because we have only 3 or 5 minutes to talk. So it's important to respect the time, because we need to listen everyone. So please be consider or be aware of the time, and be concise with your participation. I know that maybe we can talk much more about reparation, but it's important to respect the time of each one. Yeah, so we can start.
Thank you so much. I had already allowed you to bring the first speaker, but it's okay. And for colleagues, we are going to juggle the program a bit, and so we can start from whichever corner. And allow me to bring you Mr. Kibwe Copeland, and he's the president of Ikemba Youth for Reparation and one of our amazing panelists today. And Kibwe, you have 5 minutes to make your submission. I understand you had a prepared submission, so if you take 5 minutes to make the submission, then that will be nice. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, moderators. Thank you very much for everyone, and good morning to everyone wherever you are in the world. It is a pleasure to be a part of this series, and I'll go straight into my presentation. So we must break free from the loop of time and the maze that was built to box us in by those who oppressed us. We must be free to openly analyze the past, present, and future from a mind of wokeness and not from a state of demoralization that stemmed from decades of misinformation, negative stereotyping, victimization, cruelty, transgenerational trauma. In essence, the direct willful act of destroying the core ideals, customs, history, and identity of a people, the people being those who are African and of African descent. But more than making an analysis, having the ability to navigate through the murky waters of a cunning lakes, to forge collective efforts for the healing and for the development of our people and the spaces we own, reclaiming the spaces stolen from us, repainting the story they told of us, maintaining the claims for what is owed to us, reparations. For slavery in fashion of physical bondage might have been abolished, but the mental chains are heavy and very much present. But as Bob Marley echoed the words of Marcus Garvey in the song, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds." We must free our minds and feed our souls. But the task ahead is multidimensional. And as a youth, I must acknowledge those who, before me, laid the foundations we stand on today, such as Kwame Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, Julius Nyerere, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, Harriet Tubman, Winnie Kizelo Mandela, Patrice Lumumba, Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, Ye Asantewaa, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Thomas Sankara, Angela Davis, and from my hometown, Guyana, Lyndon Forbes, Samson Burnham, just to name a few. I also pay my respects for those who fight strong with excellence today, such as Professor Hilary Beckles, Professor Vereen Shepherd, Martin Kimani, Debreen Omad, Ambassador David Commijon, Christine Durrett, F.C. Campbell, Eric Phillips, and Dr. Hilary Brown. The list is very long. Simultaneously, as I acknowledge those before my time and pay respects to those present, I must make the bold statement that this fight for reparatory justice is its momentum, survival, and sustenance lies in the hands of us youth. For the perpetuation of the legacies of our foreparents in the fight for freedom and development is a task we must carry forward. We must apply ourselves, our talents, our creativity, our vigor in unity, strategically, with consistency, with the utmost clarity, and advocate amongst ourselves for ourselves, against those who have inherited the wealth and status gained from the sweat, blood, and lives of our ancestors. As youth, we must not just see ourselves as contributors of opinions, but as part of the machinery that will bring home the harvest. We must see ourselves at the table in arms with bounty of jollof rice and fufu, with haki and saltfish, curry chicken and cocoa flying fish, oil dung and pepper pot. We must see the victory and where we can and will be, our rightful place in society, not limited but taking our fair share of the pies offered to mankind, with shares and ownership of banks, the reimagining of the model of the Black Wall Street, the owners of land being credited rightfully for our inventions, proud to be who we are, paving the path for generations to come to see once and for all a united Africa. We must see where we want to be, but only through the concept of Sankofa, looking back to where we came from before the unfortunate period of enslavement, to the glorious days, can we truly understand where we're going. And even through the period of slavery, our demonstrated strength and survival says it clearly that we are unstoppable. As the president of equitable, the first youth-led organization for reparations in the Caribbean, I'm not only urging my fellow youth to stand with me and others in the struggle, but I stretch my hands out. We already have a framework in place as I promote the CARICOM 10-point plan for reparatory justice. We are all already in numbers, but more is needed. We have proof of our resilience as I bow my head down in respect to Haiti. For our Haitian revolution stands front and center in our struggle, and its case is one that we all should hold and champion. For now is the time. The how will come, and victory may be slow but sure. I believe it is necessary that we form youth institutions that specifically deals with the reparatory justice across the globe, whether through the Caribbean or the diaspora in Africa, whether it's to mimic Ikimba's or to have other organizations with the same, speaking from the same hymn. With those few words, I end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kibwe. That's such a powerful submission, and thank you so much for honoring our matriarchs in the conversation about reparations. I was so touched when you mentioned Santewa among other matriarchs, and I'm going to give it to you, Ghana, to present as the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you a lot. I'm going to pick Betty. This question is for you. What opportunities did you see for aligning reparation efforts with social service, particularly in amplifying the leadership and agency of Afro-descendant women and youth in shaping national and regional policies? Betty, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Bethlehem Jambo Kasa. I'm from Ethiopia. I'm a social media manager, and I am also a human rights and human dignity trainer. Thank you for the question, Ghana. So in my understanding, I hope you guys can hear me clearly. So the question is, what opportunities do I see for aligning reparation efforts with social services? So as we heard in the previous speech, which was very amazing, repression is not a charity. It's our right. It's something we deserve as Africa, because it's something that we need to get right for the next generation to work. So firstly, aligning reputation and with social services is a powerful strategy to heal the structure of injustice, because social services are not just charity, it's working and improving on the system that the country and the continent operates in. So this would be women, children, youth, all of them. So one way I would suggest is having targeted scholarships and youth leadership programs. So working on that in our social systems or in our social work systems that targets, that empowers youth, and that gives them the leadership that they need to increase their capability and their capacity. So targeting scholarship is one way. The other is working on reproductive health overall. So like women health, youth health, just making sure the health system is operating efficiently and effectively so that young people can use their ability and their reach and their vision very well. So making sure they have healthy needs and their health needs are met is one way we can work on that. The other is making sure youth are included in the decision-making process, because youth are not the one who should be hearing, this is what's been decided in the country, in the community, and then we move on. As you know, Africa is the continent with the largest number of youth, but yet youth are yet still to be included in decision-making process. And in AU initiatives such as this one is a great platform to include the youth, not only in the process, but also in the decision-making process. The other is promoting Afro-descendant cultural heritage in educations and in medias. So for example, in social media, I work, or with Yalda, we work in promoting positive images of Africa. So we make sure the stories that are not told about Africa, African youth, continent, countries that are doing amazing, that are hidden in the context of the bad Africa or the poverty Africa is hidden. We research stories, we interview people, we communicate, and we make sure those stories are heard, those stories are seen, and those people are highlighted. So one thing we can do as a continent is also integrating this into our education system, like so that youth can learn from their past, what has been done in the past, what sacrifices have been made in the past, but also what good things have been achieved in the past. So I think making sure those are integrated into our education system will also help build their self-esteem. So making economically and politically viable decisions, national building agenda, and making sure the youth are part of the process could really change how we view the social services, and also how we make sure women are included, youth are included in the change process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your point, Beth. I'm going to pick some of your points because it's important to make a resume of your talk, and I want to highlight the point about the heritage, the Afro-descendant heritage, because I think that is a key point to make or to establish key partnership with other countries, and specifically with Latin America, because in Latin America we have many or several expressions of heritage, Afro-descendant heritage, and it's the same because it's unknown for many people. So it's important to promote positive narratives. And in other hand, I want to highlight the points because as you said before, the social service is not charity. And in fact, we are talking about access to rights, right? So access to rights is the key for the justice in general, but access to rights without data, as the speaker explained before, if we haven't no data, we have not public policies, we have not an advance substantially in general. So so that's all, and thank you. I think is your
Thank you so much for that. And I'm just reflecting about what she said, especially on decision making, which is very, very critical. But if you think about reparations generally, and you think about reparation in the context of what we do in our day-to-day lives, in our career, in our work as young people, how do we integrate these then to the work that we are doing? For example, if you think about our medicine system or our health system, and what can we do as young people? And this is just a random chat because it is very much interlinked, and the role of indigenous knowledge in all these medical systems that we have. But I think somebody's going to speak more on that because I'm going to bring you Mr. John Musekera. And John Musekera, if you could take 5 minutes to answer these 2 questions. I think that would be really nice. I know that you've already been working on this, and so it'll be interesting to hear from what are some of the best practices that you could share. And then if you could also speak into what would you consider as opportunity when you think about reparations and social service, and how this links to some of these issues that our day-to-day realities. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good morning or good afternoon. Here in Kigali, we are in the afternoon. Based on where everyone is, good morning or good afternoon. My name is John Musekera. I'm a research fellow at UN Economic Commission for Africa, East Sub-Region Office based here in Kigali. But I'm also assistant lecturer in the University of Rwanda and the University of Kigali. It's a great opportunity to be present in this great dialogue where young generation is mobilized to speak on how Africa can be or liberation of Africa, as well as the healing from colonial and post-colonial consequences. Coming to the question asked by the moderator, I'm pleased to share with you the best practices from specifically my country that other African countries can learn in the line of advancing the rights, dignity, and empowerment of Afro descendants communities, especially women and youth. Rwanda presents a compelling model for advancing the rights and the dignity of Afro descendants communities through its post-genocide reforms focused on unity, reconciliation, gender equality, and youth empowerment. Following the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi initiative like Gacaca Courts and National Units and the Reconciliation Commission helped restore national cohesion. Now Rwanda leads globally in gender representation with women holding more than 64% in the parliament. And the women for financial inclusion accounts more than 90%. The other programs were developed to help young generation. I'm saying this because more than 60% of our population is young, are under 30 years. Now they are actively engaged through different platforms like National Youth Council, and they benefit from those programs. When we consider where Rwanda is now and where we were in the past 30 years, it shows how African countries and what African countries can do to be independent. When I'm talking about independent, it's financially, it's psychologically independent. Yes, as well as other African countries, we are still having a long journey to go, but at least it shows the picture of the country from zero to somewhere, what we like to say from zero to hero. Then our experience can be shared to other African countries. No one could think how the country from genocide can be now a unity country without ethnics. Now Rwanda is visa-free for all Africans. Wherever you are from, you are free to come in Rwanda. It's an open country for everyone. It's still difficult to say that Africa will be healed from colonial consequences as long as to go from one African country to another, you are required a visa. And when you look at about some organization or different agreement like Africa Continental Free Trade Area, do African really benefit from these agreements as long as there are still some barriers and untried barriers? Also, we need to look at the political willingness of heads of states. When we're talking about young generation, are we presented in the cabinets or in the parliaments? But at least the Rwanda can be a good image for the other African countries to mobilize or to engage the young generation into its plan. On the second questions, to be on time, I'd like to say that we need to have a cooperation for us Africans who are here and those who are in diaspora, because we need to promote our own culture. I've been saying that the colonialists, they came here in Africa and their deceased people are saints, but our deceased ancestors are ghosts. For example, I'm John Musekera. Now John is my first name, and Musekera, which is the name of my father, is the other name. Look how our culture, our social behavior, our values were destroyed by colonial. or colonialists. To heal from this, or from one step to another, we need to be one unity or one Africa, one nation. Westerners are now using one Africa country to attack another African country. This could not be, because we are all the same. There is no double standard. We all created equally. To be on time, allow me to stop here, but in one word, Africa, we need to understand that we are one person, no barriers among or between ourselves. So thank you, moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry about pronouncing your name. So I know it's Musechera, and I think I've gotten that right, and I'm so happy. And I do not think you understand how happy you've made me as someone who's working on a campaign for borderless Africa. And I agree with you when you talk about not just psychological independence, but also financial independence. We cannot talk about, ladies and gentlemen, we can't really talk about reparations without talking about economic justice, because this is where it matters. This is where our voice is needed. And just tying it to what our second speaker said in terms of including young people and women in economic decision, which is very critical. And I also agree with you when you say we are one Africa, because the colonial borders were never there before the Berlin Conference. And when we talk about reparations, whose reparations are we talking about? I think this is a question that I'm throwing randomly that you can answer when you have an opportunity during the plenary. And what does reparation look like for us? And I like the point that you say the people of diaspora must collaborate with the people of Africa. And I also want to applaud the efforts of the African Union of recognizing the diaspora as the sixth state of Africa. And this is where I think our advocacy as young people could start from, because we already have a framework that we can work with. And then we already have, we know our culture, most of us. And so we can begin the journey of rethinking and reorienting ourselves with our past cultures. And for me, reparation is not just about apologizing. Reparation is not just about returning the artifacts. Reparation must go beyond that to economic reparations, to political reparations. And let me give it to you, give it back to you, Ghana, because Musekera has really ignited the fire in me. Please take it away.
No, it's okay. And in fact, I agree with you. And in addition, I'm just want to say something more, and it's about mental health, because in the line of reparations, we need access to mental health, but mental health with a racial approach. Because if we don't add the racial approach, the racial justice approach to all the practice, to all the policies, to all the rights, we continue to reproducing the colonial, or we continue reproducing the structural racism. So we need to rethink how can we to access the rights, but always with a racial justice approach. About we have discussed, I want to ask to Dionisio two questions. First one, how can we build a stronger bridge between Africa and the Afro-descendant diaspora to push forward and unite an effective reparatory justice agenda? And second, in the same line of global economic inequalities, how can Africa states and diaspora communities work together to challenge these barriers and help reshape global financial systems to ensure fair and equal access to resources for sustainable development? So take your time.
Thank you, Ghana. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, fellow youth leaders. In the ever-dynamic global environment, we now see the emergence of power politics, transactional politics, and this is a direct threat to the global governance, peace and security environment, including decolonization processes, which also speak of reparations and healing. Issues of reparations are dear to my heart, as my great-great-great-grandfathers had is in a museum somewhere in Europe as a trophy to colonial dominance more than a century later. He was one of the chiefs who led the resistance in the first liberation war in Zimbabwe, and his name was Chief Mashaya Mombe Chinenkundu. So I speak not only scholarly or as a practitioner, but as one living the reality of African history and doing my best to serve and influence a future that is just for all. The unity between Africa and this diaspora is not merely symbolic, it is strategic. The path to reparatory justice must be transcontinental, deeply rooted in shared history and mobilized through mutual political will. To build stronger bridges, we must reconfigure Africa-diaspora relations as a cornerstone for global justice. First, we must institutionalize Africa diaspora engagement through joint reparations task forces aligned with AU frameworks, such as the Accra Declaration on Reparations and the AU Assembly Decision 884. The Caribbean Community CARICOM also offers a model with its 10-point plan for reparatory justice that can inspire continental alignment. Second, we need a Pan-African platform for truth-telling and historical education, leveraging mechanisms like the AU's Transitional Justice Policy and UNESCO's Slave Trade Route Project. These initiatives can deepen collective memory and foster cross-continental solidarity, especially among youth and women, those most affected by the intergenerational trauma of colonization and the transatlantic slave trade. Finally, we must leverage the diaspora political capital to lobby host nations in the global north. Afro-descendant parliamentarians, influencers, and scholars are uniquely positioned to amplify Africa's demand for reparatory justice and reform of global institutions that continue to marginalize our continent. And to this question, as a call to action and recommendation, the AU could consider establishing a permanent Africa Diaspora Reparatory Justice Council to coordinate strategy, advocacy, and financing mechanisms. And going to the second question of how African states and diaspora communities can work together to challenge barriers and reshape global financial systems for equitable access to resources for sustainable development. Distinguished participants, our current global financial system is neither fair nor inclusive. It is a remnant of colonial architectures that continue to marginalize African voices and exclude our development priorities. The Africa Risk Premium, biased credit ratings, and unequal access to special drawings rights are symptoms of structural injustice. To transform this, African states and diaspora communities must work hand in hand to challenge transactional global politics and demand a multilateral financial architecture grounded in equity. The UN Secretary General's report on critical energy transition minerals and the AU's Agenda 2063 both underscore this imperative. We must co-advocate for a structured Bretton Woods system where African representation is strengthened and depth is aligned with development, not exploitation. This means using our demographic dividend and mineral wealth as bargaining tools, not as concessions. Moreover, the diaspora must be central to Africa's financial sovereignty, and diaspora bonds, remittance-backed investment platforms, and dual citizenship financial incentives can unlock billions of development capital. And conclusively, as a call to action on this question, African states should champion a global reparative financing framework, for example, at the International Conference on Financing for Development, ensuring that Africa's voice reshapes the IMF, World Bank voting structures and access to capital. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janicio. I think that to put some points and some important points on the table, and I wanted to highlight some of these. First one, I think that you are offering us the biggest question about decolonizing policies, right? Because decolonizing policies, how can we decolonize policies with not a repetition of a model, of a colonial model? No, I think that is a biggest question for all of us. And second, I think that you are near of to talk about to talk about environmental justice, and it's very important because we are talking about culture, we are talking about economy, and we are talking about in the same way the care of our environments. So now we're going to ask a general question for all, and you can pick up and you can raise your hand virtually, obviously. You can raise your hand and take the voice to answer it. And the question is, what models are example of partnership between governments, international organizations, or communities offer the most promise in addressing the intergenerational trauma and socioeconomic disparities resulting from the legacies of enslavement, colonialism, and neo-colonialism? So it's a general question, so the micro is open.
Alejandra, if people are not ready, then they can write in the chat box, and then when we come back to the plenary, then they can pick the question again.
My apologies. I don't know if you could just repeat the question for me.
Alejandra, could you ask the question again?
Yeah. So the question is, what models or examples of partnership between governments, international organizations, or communities offer the most promise in addressing the intergenerational trauma and socioeconomic disparities resulting from the legacies of enslavement, colonialism, and neo-colonialism?
Yes, I believe what we are doing presently, or for example, let me look back at the UN Permanent Forum of People of African Descent that happened in April between the 14th to the 17th, whereby we bring the activists, civil society, along with the heads of government or heads of state and other agencies to get in one room to basically discuss ways forward. I believe it's very important to have these collaborative discussions and efforts, whereby we're not speaking in silos. You know, a lot of the times we have government officials talking among government officials and only looking at these issues or cases from a political standpoint. And we need to have, of course, those who can see a different viewpoint as the civil society or activists in the same room. So I believe that model, utilizing forums like the UN, the Permanent Forum, and others that allow that fusion of government agencies and civil society is very important and very effective. Holding them accountable.
And I support the statements of my colleague. And in 2013, in the Caribbean, at the Caribbean Heads of Government meeting with all CARICOM member states, the CARICOM Reparation Commission was established, and that body is extremely important. because it not only focused on accessing and tackling reparations from a regional perspective, but an outcome from that meeting was also the establishment of national reparations bodies, and there's also a subcommittee of prime ministers across the region, which really shows the priority of reparations across CARICOM, and it really sets a fundamental role. And as has mentioned several times today, the CARICOM 10-point plan towards reparations, which is so important in advocating not only for financial justice, but rather to lay out a comprehensive framework on how Caribbean member states could be receive reparations. And I think that's one of the most fundamental role that happened almost 10 decades ago. Well, 1 decade ago, 10 years.
Thank you so much. Anyone else want to share something? So we need to continue, and I just want to highlight a point that I consider very important, because you have been talking about dignity representative in the parliament, and in general. Politic representation of African and Afro-descendant people. But I just want to say something. For example, in Mexico, we have some affirmative actions that allows that Afro-Mexican people take place in this political scene. But we have a problem. We have a problem of usurpation. This is people. That means that people who just say I'm Afro-Mexican and take place in these areas, and then that people don't work have not proposals to work with communities, with black Mexican communities, or with black communities in Mexico. So we can we can talk about reparations, but we need to talk we need to take the risk in count, not just in an idealizing way, because it's important to advance and to ensure an advance in public policy. It's important to take in count the risk of affirmative actions. Maybe for some of us is incredible, or I don't know, but in Mexico we have that problem. We have a problem of usurpation of the identity of other persons who not work for us for our communities, and we don't have either policy to regulate this. We just have affirmative actions, and in that point we need an interregional action, maybe to take an action in the way to as observators, I don't know, maybe, or to call to action, or to make an echo of the things that are happening in other parts of the world. So yeah, that's my point, and I think that is your turn, Anne.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. That was quite an informative segment, and I'm excited.
Anne.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Alejandra is in my head because she's the next speaker. So I think that's why she's in my head.
Because we are from Mexico.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to say that that was a good information that we got from you. But then it would be interesting to hear from Alejandra Tente, who is a historian. I hope you pronounced your name well. And Alejandra, if you could talk to us on the roles that government can play in translating the global reparation calls to, national policies, not just for you, people of African descent, but even for us Africans, and where do we find the synergies for the two?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm going to speak in Spanish, so you can be ready with the translation, please. Mi nombre es Alejandra Tentle, soy una mujer afromexicana, afroindígena de Ciudad de México, pero vivo actualmente en Nueva York. Y bueno, respondiendo a la pregunta, en primer lugar, considero que lo que comenta Ana es bastante importante, estoy muy de acuerdo y creo que no se ha dado como la oportunidad de tener estos espacios de conversación de sociedad civil, tanto en México como también en lugares como mencionaban antes del foro permanente. Creo que es un tema muy importante que se debe tomar en cuenta junto con otros más que tenemos, pero que específicamente no se ha dado el tiempo a sociedad civil para poder expresarlo. También considero que es importante pues que los gobiernos justamente reconozcan sus limitaciones en cuanto a su conocimiento sobre la historia de la afrodescendencia en sus propios países y que se acerquen precisamente a sociedad civil para tener un mayor entendimiento tanto de las problemáticas que vivimos particularmente en nuestros países, pero también agregaría ahí a las personas que migran. ¿Por qué la afrodescendencia está migrando? ¿Por qué los afromexicanos o en general la afrodescendencia en Latinoamérica está migrando hacia otros lugares? Hablo de Latinoamérica específicamente porque es el espacio y el contexto que conozco. Entendimiento de qué estamos viviendo y que debido a esa misma historia y contextos que son totalmente diferentes, aunque la raíz y la problemática sea pues la misma, sabemos la estructura racista y colonial, pues la manera en la que vivimos puede ser diversa y estas políticas públicas deben estar centradas a ese contexto específico que cada país está viviendo. También debemos contemplar una participación significativa de representación de personas afrodescendientes como parte justamente que está diciendo, que comentó Ana, Gana sobre las diputaciones, senadurías, etcétera, porque pues aunque en muchos países, incluidos el nuestro México, ya existe, está también este problema de las acciones afirmativas, pero también que las personas que están y que realmente sí están haciendo un trabajo, pues no son una mayoría en estas diputaciones, estas senadurías, y un trabajo tan grande y extenso que podrían ser estas reparaciones, que aparte no se han hablado como tal en México, pues no pueden recaer en solamente 3 o 5 personas, debe de haber una mayor representación y que esta representación pues tenga el conocimiento del contexto que estamos viviendo. Y no sucede por lo que comenta pues precisamente Gana. También debo mencionar que los gobiernos deben de tener en cuenta a la sociedad civil y que existan puentes de comunicación directa desde paneles, talleres, reuniones de escucha activa a las situaciones que estamos viviendo, pero que además cuando hagan esto existan reportes claros de qué se está llevando a cabo con la información que ellos llevan, así como incluir en los procesos posteriores a la escucha de estas problemáticas, pues que se quede que no se quede en este punto, que sea más allá, qué se está haciendo, qué se va a hacer y que no nada más sea como nos escuchan y después ya no hay ninguna acción real. También el papel debe ser activo y de pares, pues la mayoría de las personas que ocupan estos puestos de gobierno, que hablan de nuestros temas, pero que no son afromexicanos, pues no entienden esta realidad. Y debe ser un papel de ayuda y no de competencia también, en el que tengamos espacios de participación y no por compadrazgos, como decimos en México, que es realmente lo que sucede en general en la política en México. Y es una responsabilidad muy grande que no puede trivializarse y que debe ser para beneficiar a la población afrodescendiente y atender nuestras problemáticas con una perspectiva antirracista y decolonial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. But just a quick follow-up. I know you already talked about the role that youth can play in reparations. But then do you have other ways that you see them contributing? And I know you also talked about political representation and the importance of young people getting into leadership positions so that they can develop some of this quota system to allow meaningful political participation. But what other ways do you think youth can actually participate in reparation, especially not just participating, but then meaningful participation so that like their voice is heard? If you take 2 minutes on that, then we can go to the next.
Ok, sí, bueno, sigo en español. Considero que esa es una pregunta bastante importante y significativa porque en general, al menos en mi experiencia y lo que he visto, las juventudes y las mujeres siempre tienen una participación muy marcada y muy activa en la organización y el liderazgo de las acciones que podamos llevar a cabo como sociedad civil. Y siempre es en beneficio de sus comunidades, y algo que me encanta es que siempre van desde el arte, la educación, la historia, la música, toman diferentes perspectivas en cosas que ellos y ellas saben hacer, lo toman y lo politizan, y creo que eso es algo bastante importante que la juventud ha estado haciendo, toma una postura política. Sin embargo, muchas veces la falta de financiamiento, las problemáticas sociales en general en cuanto a posturas pues fascistas que conocemos, de migración, de visados, perfilamiento racial que estamos viviendo en estos momentos y que se ha vivido siempre, ¿verdad? Hacen que las juventudes no estén llegando a espacios en donde su voz pueda ser realmente escuchada o donde o tenga un impacto de lo que están haciendo y cómo pueden pues, ser empujadas por estas mismas políticas públicas pues, de manera internacional a sus localidades. Necesitamos el financiamiento para llevar a cabo tanto nuestros proyectos y así tener un mayor alcance e impacto en los trabajos que ya se están haciendo, porque las juventudes ya están organizadas haciendo cosas. También considero que necesitamos la confianza de las personas que ya nos han precedido para liderar procesos locales, pero también gubernamentales. Necesitamos alianzas también con juventudes africanas y de la diáspora para poder aprender de sus procesos, sus mecanismos y que ellos también escuchen los nuestros y podemos tener un mejor entendimiento de qué es lo que está pasando en cada una de las localidades, porque pues sabemos que el problema es general, pero la manera en la que están siendo, pues estas consecuencias, cómo son llevadas a cabo en cada contexto, pues es parecido, pero diferente por la misma historia, ¿no? Que se tiene en cada país. Y pues aplicar las que nos puedan funcionar, ya que les han funcionado antes a otras personas y viceversa, aprender unos de otros. Y pues claro, también creo importante considerar la perspectiva intergeneracional. Debemos aprender de las personas que ya hicieron algo, pero también de cómo las juventudes ahora están teniendo estas acciones desde el contexto pues actual. Y también importante agregar la perspectiva de las personas afrodescendientes que emigran. Me parece que es un tema que, aunque se habla, no es tocado de manera como holística y no se profundiza, pues las perspectivas de nuevo son muy diversas. Entonces pueden tener una perspectiva de un migrante afromexicano, pero luego una perspectiva de un migrante haitiano, etcétera, y unir esas acciones que se están llevando. Y también, pues decir que la juventud, insisto, ya está organizada, tenemos ideas, acciones, movilizaciones, solo necesitamos la ayuda de los demás actores sociales para poder generar un mayor impacto social. Quiero terminar diciendo que no pueden haber reparaciones históricas cuando en países como el mío no se reconoce a la población afromexicana en la sociedad. Si bien se logró el reconocimiento constitucional, aún falta mucho para que la sociedad reconozca y acepte nuestra existencia, y pues esa lucha es parte de las reparaciones. Las juventudes y las mujeres afromexicanas estamos en primera línea tomando acciones para que se haga valer lo que el reconocimiento constitucional pues significa, que es la dignificación de nuestra existencia en nuestros propios países, el reconocimiento y el derecho a una vida digna desde todas las diferentes formas en que nuestros conocimientos y contextos pueden aportar.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. That was super powerful, and I agree with you, the role of arts in all this. And I like the fact that already the Constitution recognizes the Afro-Mexico population, and so you already have a place to start with at least. And you can think about what forms of solidarity would you require from fellow youth from this continent of Africa. I wanted to bring someone, Anna, should I bring the person? Okay, great. So I wanted to bring somebody else, then throw it to my co-moderator, Anna. And then I think after that, we'll have an open session for people to contribute. And I wanted to bring Dr. Charis Francis, who is an associate researcher at the Queen Mary's University in London. And Dr. Charis, you're going to talk to us about what would you consider as opportunities for reparation, especially amplifying the leadership of the Afro-descendant in Africa. Admasu, I see your hand, but you will speak next. immediately after Dr. Charis.
Dr. Charis is not online, and I'm not sure if that was communicated to you.
Okay, then we can have Admas ask. I think it's a contribution or a. Okay. Okay, great. Ghana, do you want to bring the next person then?
Yeah, and I want to to say something more because I think that intergenerational approach is about access to mental health, because we need to rethink on our ancestors not as a victims. No, yet because because the history has teaching us or has taught us think about our history just based in victims. So it's important to change, to switch this way to tout the history and to talk about ancestors. And then about education, I see in the chat that someone comment that university and colleagues should be included in discussion. And again, in Mexico, for example, we have supposedly we have 500 teachers in all the country that recognize it as Afro-descendant people. But in the universities, we don't have teachers, Afro-descendant teachers. So it's important. How can we talk about inclusion? How can we talk about a close relation between academia and civil society and government if we don't have the places, if we don't have representation in education and in political sense? I am just to bring that question and to share this point of view with all of you. So the next person, or the next question is for for John, and I want to ask you, what can be done to ensure greater youth involvement in advocating for reparation for African people of Africa descendant? John, are you here, John?
It appears that John might have dropped off.
Yeah. Sorry. So I don't know if someone else can take this question. Maybe the people who not talking, or I pick up other person. I can do that.
Maybe you can pick another person, and then after that we can open the plenary.
Yeah, I think that the same question could be for Eskire. Eskire, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Could you just repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. So the question is, what can be done to ensure greater youth involvement in advocating for reparation for African and people of African descent?
Yeah, I'm very happy that you would have asked that question, because roughly 2 years ago, if you were to ask me about reparations, I would not have much information. And that really highlights the efforts of advocacy and the efforts of persons within the CARICOM region and persons from Africa who are actively working towards teaching people about African descent and teaching people about the importance of reparations. And that has really pushed me to be involved in this conversation. I'm not an expert in the field, but I'm definitely impacted by everyday efforts. And I see the importance for us to firstly understand reparations, and then to join the conversation and to join the efforts to advocate. And so how do we get young people involved? I think one of the first things that we need to do is to ensure that persons from Africa and African descent understand each other. There's a need for us to teach people about the history of Africa, teach people about the history of our African descent. So that would mean persons from the Caribbean should at any point in time know majority of the different regions or different countries within Africa, because I'm sure if you ask someone from Africa to name at least 10 Caribbean countries, it would be a challenge. And so that provides a serious gap. And so we need to fix that. We need to educate persons about each other. We need to teach people about the different regions and to teach our history. Why do we connect? What's the similarity between us? And then when we have established that relationship, we would then go into the best practices, because if you look at both regions, we have developed successful solutions as young people to some of our challenges, and we share those similar challenges. And when we connect and educate each other about the best practices, we then open a space for us to strongly and connect our voices and advocate on a more stronger forefront. And I think establishing those efforts is so important, because then when that is done, people will have a more appreciation to why we need to advocate for reparations, the impact that we're making. And when we speak about reparations, I am very happy about the CARICOM 10-point plan, because one of the points mentioned is the need for us to have debt reliefs or debt cancellation, and I'm a strong supporter of that. And I'm also a strong supporter of us advancing our educational systems. We need to see persons who once colonized us invest in our education system and invest in our healthcare system. And we're not just asking for money, but we're asking for technical support. We're asking for you to advance our sporting infrastructure, to teach us the skills that we rightfully deserve to know. And it is not you giving us a privilege, or you're giving us or those persons just giving us something that we are begging for. It's a right. It's something that we deserve. And so we as young people have that responsibility to call for it, to advocate for it, and to take it by all means.
Thank you so much, Skier. And I think it's important what you are talking, because I think that we can take an Pan-African approach to rethink the education. Not, yeah, the education from this perspective can ensure can endure the cooperations between countries. So I just want to read a comment from the chat. And this comment is from Atmasu Ergano and said, I am from Ouachemo University, public institution from Ethiopia. Please include young people from universities to be part of the discussion, please. Yeah, so it's really important to take in account the young people. And I think that Betty, you want to comment something? Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to add on what Ske said. One way we can involve the youth is using youth-friendly platforms. So using technology is a very huge initiatives right now. So as we know, Africa has the largest youth, and youth are usually high on technology and art. So using different technologies, we're in the world of scrolling, basically. Me working in social media, I've learned that we need to capture the youth attention through different media forms, but technology is a very high means. So using technology and also using art to reach the youth is one way we can get them involved. The other I would suggest is using internship and apprenticeship programs, even as early as high school. Making sure this youth, when we work with organizations, making sure government lets organizations know to play their civic duty and they roll out their internship and apprenticeship programs, youth can participate in this program so that they can get better, well equipped. So it's not just telling youth do this, do that, but we're also making sure they go through the process, they're well equipped, and they get what they need to become the means or the end that we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Betty. I think that we have more participations. I can see, I see the hand of Kiwe. Do you want to speak?
Yes. Yes, not to take too much time, but just from what Betty was saying just now, using culture, the arts. The Ikimba, when we were formed in 2017, no, I think it was in 2018 after our initiation, we formed a program called Sankofa,
whereby we utilize the arts to move away a bit from the traditional way of teaching, to utilize poetry, drama, music, and the arts to teach history. So through that, we talked about the enslavement period, we talked about reparations, we talked about the actions and so on. And we had young people from schools, and this is not particularly for children of African descent, because it is a belief that every person, despite your ethnicity, you are a victim of history, whether the way you see people or the way you're seen. So we utilize the arts, and it's very instrumental that we speak the youth language. So I commend your words as well, Bethlehem, when it comes to talking about AI. The age of AI is very important. Utilizing culture, speaking the youth language, because some people respond to poetry, some people respond to music, some people respond to the arts, and of course, some respond to these kind of conversations as well.
Thank you, Anne. Do you want to comment something?
Can I do that as we do the panel, and then you can take the two hands first, and then I'm gonna, or do I just go right ahead and open the panel because their hands already, I see that. Okay, then. Thank you so much, Anna, for that. And thank you so much, Kibwe, for mentioning about the languages and the arts, because as it is already as Africans, and this is the lived realities of Africans like me, we are not even able to organize because our country, our continent, as you know, is divided into different zone languages, Francophonie, Anglophone, Portuguese, Arabic. It's so crazy. And so for me, if we must have this conversation where we also, think about ways which we could move forward, then we also need to think about the politics of language, because it's very, very important. And language inclusion also means reorienting ourselves to our traditional languages, which is very key. A lot of young people like myself cannot even speak our mother tongue. For me, English is not my first language. My first language potentially could be my mother tongue or Swahili, but then how much value do we put in our language system, like in our traditional language system, in our traditional heritage, in our traditional culture, at least for the dress code? Like a lot of people are embracing, African dresses, Afro hair, and whatnot. But then, because I see there's so many hands, then I'm going to say this is where we open plenary. So because there's already hands, I'm going to start with those, and then more people can raise their hands. And if I don't see you, don't worry, you will have my co-moderator. And for some reasons, I don't know why we share the same name. So maybe we should say Ann squared, will help me to see you. So we can have Fumilayo, and then we have, okay, let's start with Admaso, because your hand had been up for such a long time. And then Fumilayo, and then we will have Eunice Adiambo, and then anybody else who comes after that. And Ghana will help me see you and take on you. Go ahead, Admaso.
I'm not sure if Admaso is here, because I think that Admaso isn't here, but I don't know. We can wait a couple
He's
of
muted. He needs to unmute.
Yeah.
Admaso is muted. Admaso, please unmute your microphone and speak.
I think as he's doing that, maybe we can have you for me, and then he will come right after you, or right after you, Lisa Diambo, whenever he's ready, like his microphone is working. So go ahead, for me live.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's been a very interesting conversation, and not to take too much time, I totally agree with the use of different mediums to get young people to participate more. And beyond just learning, learning is important because it bridges the gap between awareness and action. And using research, young people may not have the patience to read long research papers, and so using mediums like infographics and carousels to just educate young people on, the culture of African people, so that we can change the notion of Africa as one country. Because when you ask people that have never been to Africa before, they think of Africa as just one country, not knowing that it's a region of more than 54 countries. And so changing that narrative and helping them to understand that we're very diverse people, and even African diaspora, the communities are very diverse, then we can get them to appreciate us more and appreciate the diversity that we bring to the table. Then, young people can also use medium as an avenue for changing this of challenging disinformation. So one platform that I know does this is ONE, ONE, and I've seen videos where they share different facts about Africa so that they can educate even those that are not Africans or of African descent. That is one. I think one thing I wanted to add is that employing the use of study tours and exchange programs is one great way to sort of ensure cultural and social integration. So, for instance, I currently stay in Nigeria, but I've had the opportunity to interact and learn of different African cultures through exchange programs. And so, going to different African countries to learn about the similarities, differences in culture can help better collaboration, can help, when we talk about peer-to-peer learning, peer-to-peer action, coming together to change this narrative, then we can make use of study tools and exchange programs to achieve that, so that bringing people together under one roof. For instance, I went for an exchange program in 2023, and I for about 5-6 weeks, I lived with people that were from 8 different countries, and so that interaction helps us to see and appreciate the differences and similarities in our culture, and forge alliances and allyship to change how people perceive Africa. Such things is very important. And what you said, of course, the politics of language. When I told somebody that I was learning Swahili, the person said, "Oh, why not learn French? What would Swahili do on the global scene?" And it just made me understand that there is really politics of language, and why can't Swahili be recognized as global language like French or German or Spanish? So it's very important to continue discussing these things in global forums so that we can pave the way forward.
Thank you so much. And indeed, I agree that the exchange programs are like one of the best ways, and also young people using the different medium. My favorite young person from Nigeria is called Pelumi Nubi, and she drove all the way from London to Lagos on a car, and in all these countries that she passed by, she was showing the African culture, and she's quite big on that. And there are many more, like another young person in Zambia called Wezi Pone, who is an artist who does very spiritual music about Zambia and about Africa as a continent, which is quite something. But I'm gonna give it to you, Eunice, to share your thoughts. And I think you guys were right. I think the internet of our brother is not working. So Eunice, please take it away before we give it back to Ghana.
Thank you very much, Anne. My name is Eunice Odhiambo. I work for Africans Rising. Africans Rising is a Pan-African movement that promotes the unity, justice, peace, and dignity amongst Africans in the continent and in the diaspora. I work there as a reparations campaign officer, and that's why I'm interested in the conversations that are going on. So at Africans Rising, we have taken a movement's approach to the reparations campaign. And when I say a movement's approach to the reparations campaign, I mean we realized at some point that the conversations around reparations had become elitist. So we were doing really well, conversing, talking about reparations, throwing a petition here and there. But then we had left our grassroots. Do the Africans at the grassroots really understand what reparations is? Did they even understand some of the history that we are seeking to change? Because if you go to school, like we go to school, and the history that we are taught there is so sanitized that people who were born after the colonialists left the continent would not understand when you tell them about the terrors and the horrors that the colonialists melted against Africans. That said and done, while we are taking this movements approach to reparations, we are centering our focus on the people at the grassroots, ensuring that we all understand what reparations is, why we need reparations, and how we are going to achieve reparations. So we recognize the diaspora as the 6th region of this great continent of Africa, and we are involving the diaspora fully. As such, we have an initiative we are calling the Diaspora Series. And in the Diaspora Series, we are giving opportunities to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to tell us their story, to share with us their lived experiences, their history, what has been happening there that we don't know. What do they think? What do they feel right now? And what are some of their demands for reparations, so that we move together in one heavy Pan-African campaign for reparations. So my role really, my interest in this conversation, and I've listened to you all, and I like it that young people are taking up the campaign. But I'm here to invite you, my little brothers and sisters from the diaspora, to this diaspora series. I'll ask Anne to kindly, before you wrap up, because I've tried to share in the chat, but I can't access it. But I would ask Anne, before you wrap it up, to share the link. I'll send it to you in your WhatsApp, in your WhatsApp, so that you are able to share with them. But then we are asking for these stories from the diaspora, because we'll do this for 6 months. Then in November, we hope to launch and publish a compendium of diaspora stories from Africans from different parts of the world who may have not had the chance to live or visit Africa, but are living out there, and I have very many experiences that we need to know back home. So thank you very much, Anne, for this.
Thank you so much, Eunice. I think Eunice technically took the opportunity to market our organization. Eunice is my colleague. We work together in the campaign and advocacy unit. And as she said, I'm going to put a link on the chat. For those of you who would wish to join the reparations working group, then you can reach out. I put it in the chat, then you click on it. For those of you who are interested in the Borderless Africa campaign, that is also an opportunity. And also on the 29th, we will be talking to your sisters, Ghana and Alejandra from Brazil. So stories from Sao Paulo, from the Afro-Brazilians as well. So
from
finally,
Mexico.
Oh, yeah, because, okay,
Yeah,
so the stories from Sao Paulo are from Brazil, but then I feel like there's so much interconnectedness, especially when you shared your challenges of political inclusion, because they shared that with us as well, and also about education and how the Afro-Brazilians are having a lot of challenges into the formal education. But I was getting excited because I saw Admaso is officially here. My God, he's been raising his hand forever. So I'm just going to give it to him. But also for Milayo said in the chat box, one person I discovered recently that speaks extensively about the African history and culture on Instagram is Valerie Keter, and she does a good job. Yes, I totally agree with you. Valerie Keter is doing such a good job. You can follow her on Instagram. She's an African living in Kenya as well. So link her up. You can follow Pelumi Nubi on Instagram as well. I am not even their like ambassador person, but I just love the work that they do. That's why I'm sharing. Admaso, please take the floor. Can you unmute your microphone because you're muted? click on the sign or the microphone sign with a cross.
Okay, while Admasu is at it, there are questions in the Q&A. Maybe those could be read out and responded to.
Thank you. Ghana, do you want to take the questions?
Yeah, so I'm going to make a general question for all. Yeah, or no, you make a question before. Yeah, can you repeat it? Anne?
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. I'm just to comment something more, and is maybe we can take an advantage of this space and share in the chat so many projects that you know about dissemination, about education, and I'm thinking in how here in this plenary we have talking about the language, because I think that is my appreciation. But I want to share with all of you that the discussion about reparation is yet centered in countries of English, no, where in countries where English is the language, but for example, in other countries in Latin America, it seems it look like reparation discussion is not near of us, and I think it's important to retake a perspective of linguistic justice, because linguistic justice finally is if we think in language as a barrier, we are reproducing the racism, no? Yeah, right. So we can think in so many projects that could be an example for all, maybe not just in English, maybe in other language. Also, it's important to know that projects or that initiatives in other countries. And I just want to say, for example, that I work from an intercontinental magazine that called it Afro Colectiva. You can find us in Instagram as Afro Colectiva, and we make content in Spanish, but we are open to collaborate with other people. So I want to make a general question for all of you, and it's about.
Alejandra, sorry, Ghana, maybe before you do that, there's two questions in the chat. If you allow me to read them, then you can pick on someone to answer them.
Yeah.
Whichever panelist is ready to do that. So the network of National Human Rights Institution, NAHRI, recently co-organized a policy dialogue forum with the African Union on the theme of the year in Addis Ababa. It was on 7th to 9th May. Based on my experience participating in similar forum, one critical question remains at the forefront of my reflections. What are the concrete institutional settings and mechanistic recommendations required to effectively implement reparatory justice? Who should do what? And I think you can pick someone to do that. And the other question, I don't know, I think it's a comment. It says, greeting, achieving socio-economic and cultural justice for all Africans and the African diaspora, all respect and appreciation. I hope to present a research paper soon in the upcoming seminar in September and October. I will have time. I speak in Arabic. Fatma say, okay. Did Fatma say she wants to speak? Yes, I think Ghana will be able to give you that opportunity. And then somebody else says, thank you. Okay, that one I think was read. I was just trying to look at the questions that were highlighted to us to ask. I think those are the questions. Ghana, you can choose on a speaker to answer, and I saw Michelle's hand up. Admasu, we've really tried to help. I don't know how else to do this, but then you may type your question on the chat box and then we raise it on your behalf. Ghana, please go ahead.
Yeah, we have a participation. We have a head of Dionisio. Dionisio, you have the open mic.
Thank you so much, Ghana and Ain. Well, in my other life outside Aulin, I am an elected government official. I ran for office a year and a half ago. So I understand how both the CSOs, the NGOs, as well as how governments work. So to answer this question, with regards to concrete institutional settings and mechanistic recommendations, I would like to assert that the AU itself is like a coalition of African governments. So member states themselves have the first mandate to champion the reparatory justice agenda. So I would like to think that we must find a buy-in to ensure that this agenda makes it to the decision-making table of legislators. As a legislator, I know that not only in Zimbabwe, but in many countries, there is what they call a whipping system. So regardless of whatever is going on outside the legislative houses, there is need to ensure that these agendas and whatever is concerning people make it to the agenda of the houses of assembly, of local government, so that they can be discussed at policy level. It is not enough for us to gather. Well, it is enough in terms of research and recommendations that are then tabled. But after we have gathered like this, what then is the next step? The next step is engagement and lobbying with our governments, with our networks and wherever people are coming from, so that the legislators themselves find value in this and it becomes national policy. And when AU member states themselves are into this agenda, then they can advance it further at the AU. So in terms of who should do what, I think we should start from the bottom upwards. Each country has a history and what is each member state doing. So I implore all participants to engage and find out what their government is doing towards this agenda, what the CSOs in your countries are doing, and how both can work together in an operational manner to advance this reparatory justice agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dionisio. I'm going to give the word, to give the microphone for Damon. I can see your complete name.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, moderators, guests, and panelists. I have a question regarding the economic stability of Africa. How can we develop a system where Africa can take advantage of its own resources through economic means and get Africa where its economic agenda is set by Africa, and this includes debt and various other factors. We've heard from high-level policy officials. However, I really want to have an input from youth representatives as well.
Thank you so much for your question, Damon. If someone wants to answer it?
If I may, I believe when it comes to the question of how African countries can really take hold of their own resources and champion their own development, it has a lot to do with the willpower of the politicians in these African countries. Because there's a lot of politics that really wraps around this possibility of resources, of assets, and even how it's used and who benefits from it. And it goes back to political policies or ideologies of politicians who might value more of their ties or diplomatic ties with maybe the ABC countries, as suppose as maybe breaking war to say, look, we are going to, let's look, for example, in Burkina Faso, what we see with the Abraham terror, what's happening right presently. we have that kind of shakeup, and what he faces as an African leader who decided, look, we are going to champion our policies, or we're going to champion our resources, and maybe shut out those external persons or countries. So it's basically, to me, the willpower of the political figures who are in power to actually take on that task, as you know what, we're going to go against the world order. Because over the years, coming out from the period of enslavement and even to colonialism, we've had foreign countries benefit from Africa more than Africa. We've had Africa creates, I think, 30% of the world's resources come from Africa, but yet still, Africa is benefiting the least from those resources. So I think it goes back to politics. It's heavily hidden in politics and heavily hidden through willpower and the ability to actually, push back against the external powers.
Thank you, Kiwe. Anne, do you want to comment something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something, just something related to what my speaker who came before Kiwe said. In my other life, I'm also the Eastern Africa representative for the African Union Wise Youth, which is a subsidiary mechanism of Panel of the Wise, which is a body that does a lot of preventive diplomacy and conflict work in the continent. So this year, during the AU Summit, on the margins of that, when this theme of the year was being launched, the ECOSOC Secretariat gave an outline of some of the things that will be done for the year. And there was something that was mentioned about a mechanism, and I know there's plans to come up with a committee of experts on reparations. So that is a space that young people and all of us can take advantage of. And there's also going to be a working group, I think, on legal experts on reparations. I may not really remember all of the things they say, but then there's also a lot of engagement apart from us Africans Rising as civil society. There's also other engagement ongoing with the different civil society like Femnet, who are doing a lot of work on gender, and then the ECOSOC is doing all the convenings for the diaspora and Africa, so you can check them out. And also just to say that if we must start participating in these discussions, then there's a stronger conviction to link what is being offered at continental level to our local efforts. And in some countries, reparations may not really be very pronounced, I would say, but then if as young people we link it to our work, for example, I work on migration, I work on peace and security, then if you think about movements of people, and reparations, and if you think about reparations and gender, for example, there's no reparations without gender justice or economic justice. If you think about the high cost of living, which is one of the things that us young people, like in many of our countries, there's always protests about finance bids and et cetera, et cetera. So if you think about the debt cancellation, for example, we know about the austerity measures in African countries and Caribbean countries as well. So those are just some of the areas that we could plug in. And even about decolonizing the education system, I think my heart sank when Ghana said there is no Afro-descendant representation teachers in her country, which for me was really painful. So that is also something that we need to decolonize. Whose knowledge are we consuming? How is it working to us? Somebody, I think it was one of the speakers who said she's speaking as someone who had their dad in the reparation. My maternal grandfather was one of the Mau Mau field marshals, and the only advantage maybe I have over other young people in Kenya is that I hear the stories from my grandmother. But how many more people will hear the stories from the grandmothers? And because some of this information is not even in the books where we can read. So I think we have a bigger advantage to connect the reparation struggle to the work that each one of us is doing. If, for example, you're doing healing and psychosocial support, then there's a whole aspect of, inherited trauma, post-colonialism, and even just our justice system and the criminal system and the way it is, because it's unfortunately, it's not very restorative, because prisons are not spaces where people should go to be killed. They're supposed to be, rehabilitated and be brought back. But usually what I see, and this could be very biased because it's a personal opinion, is when people go to prison, they come back worse. And then the whole process of rehabilitating them to the communities. So I think those are areas that we could look into. And let me give it back to you, Ghana, to do the questions, and then maybe hand it over, because I think a few minutes. Thank you. I just want to contribute that.
Thank you a lot. We have other participation, so we can take it. First one is Funmila Io, and then Betty. So you can participate. Yeah, you can do.
All right, thank you for giving me this. Can you hear me? Okay, yes. So just to answer the question, I wanted to just share my views on how we can set our own academic agenda, because during the last ADS session, there was discussions on our African model and how, we do more of importing and all of those things and consuming, and we need to shift away from that. And just recently, I attended a session on trade and investment in Nigerian context, and there was a lot of discussions around how we can take lessons from best practices abroad and develop and foster industrialization in our individual countries and even in the continent. And so take, for instance, how China's steel industry is booming, and it's allowing it to manufacture heavy products that would otherwise have required it to import parts, to form a whole. But now, because it has done a lot of investment and development of its steel industry, you also have India and the make in India drive to foster industrialization in these countries. We see how well it is playing out. And so if we look at, encouraging our government and encouraging industrialization, supporting nano and small enterprises to manufacture goods, supporting the agri-tech or agribusiness, food processing and agro-processing industry, supporting manufacturing of cars and phones, that all the things that would rather import, and encouraging young people to also prefer locally made goods to imported products is a good way to ensure that we are reducing dumping, and we are encouraging what we produce in the country. And so when we fully embrace it, we are also promoting our product to people outside. And something else I wanted to mention was with regards to inter-African and intra-African trade. We have the AFCFTA, and I understand that it has caused a lot of progress, but there is still more to be done in terms of, the discussion around even visa restrictions, flight restrictions, and a lot of restrictions within the African region. It needs to be discussed and addressed. And so ensuring that we are eliminating the barriers that hinder smooth trade, and even talking about digital trade, having a one-stop platform that can facilitate trade, ensure that licenses and duties and all the laws and compliance structure is accessible to anybody that wants to trade within African regions, and giving priority to people that are fostering trade and fostering economic development within the African region is a way that we can set our own agenda and ensure that we are accelerating integration. And also the aspect of, I have read, while studying international trade scene, that one thing that has really stopped us from full regional integration is the aspect of conflict and lack of consensus. And so we also need to look at the aspect of peaceful transactional, the politics that 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 is involved in trade, ensuring that there is better diplomatic relations, and even the aspect of currency. What is the possibility of having a recognized currency that can ensure economic development across the African region, so that nobody is left behind. So that is one way, and that way it will also help us to change the narrative, that people see us beyond just poverty, hunger, and the likes of all this narrative that they paint on social media. So that is how we can set our own economic agenda and just ensure that we are promoting the African-made products and even our individual country-made products in the global scene.
Thank you, Fumi Layao. So now we can hear a participation from Betty, and we can reach to conclusions because we are over time, and we're really sorry, but yeah, it's a long and extensive dialogue that we can keep for hours. So, Betty.
Okay, thank you so much. Funialo gave us a very detailed understanding of what can be done to increase our economy. So I think in general, in Africa, we should be not just the engineer of our resources, but we should also be the architect of it. So I think one thing we should do is every country's government should invest on those small businesses, SMEs that are trying to produce in-country raw materials, in-country products. So that's one thing we should focus on. That needs huge investments because once those SMEs grow, a lot of in-country products grow. The other one is that was mentioned, the FCFTA. That's a huge, huge, huge initiative that we are still yet to utilize. Like bordering with each other, with African countries, working together is a huge initiative because resource-wise, Africa is built with resources. Like you even see the human injustice that's currently happening in different African countries. On top of being a social media manager, I'm a human dignity and human rights trainer. So we hear a lot of stories on how just for the sake of exploiting resources, a lot of people are facing injustice. So this is where the government comes in, protects its people and also protects its resources. The other one I would want to add is investing in STEM programs and also in entrepreneurship programs. There are not a lot of or enough internship programs in Africa. There's always different employability programs, but there are not enough programs that push young people to be entrepreneurs. For example, one famous program we have is Jasiri. It's a program that focuses on different African youth aged 17 to 35 that can work on different entrepreneurial skills. And even something that it does is it brings different African youth together, and then they learn from each other and they even become business partners. So someone from Kenya, Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria can come together and open a business. So expanding on programs like this, exchange programs where people with different minds can come together and work on business ideas would also be something that can be done on ground and not just something that stays on a theory level. So focusing on the people that are on ground, focusing on the people that are doing the hard work and making sure they're reimbursed, invested on is a huge, huge way to make sure our economy booms. Thank you so much.
Thank you a lot. I'm going to read a comment from Atmasu from the chat, and he said, I am from Washington University. Youth participation is critical since Africa youth can change Africa to be prosperous. Africa need to be economically independent without aid from Western nations. We need to support each other, focusing on agricultural production industries, manufacturing. Government should take much budgets on agro-processing and increasing yield in agriculture. For example, in the wheat production in Ethiopia, is the best to be independent in food security if supported by African Union to extend to entire country and continent. So thank you very much to all of you. We are over time, and we need to to make some general conclusions. So I'm going to comment something. I think that across our dialogue, we have been talk or we have discussed how reparation is not just about economic. It's not just about apologies. It's a transformation. It's a deeply transformation about education, about all of the political system, and we need the hands of all of you, and it's just an invitation to take part in this work, to be in these dialogues, in future dialogues, and that's all from my part. I'm from Mexico, and I can offer my spaces and my participation from this side of the world. So Anne, I give you the
Thank you so much. For me, this has really been insightful, honestly. And sometimes when you're doing this work, you would want to give up, especially when you don't see the connection between the work that you're doing with your local work. But then listening to all your examples, we have given very concrete, actionable recommendations that can be taken forth by the conveners of the webinar. And we've also identified opportunities that, we could utilize to advance the reparatory justice agenda and restitution, because I know today we didn't speak a lot about restitution, but then that's also something else, because, for example, the artifacts that were taken, when they are brought back to our country, sometimes we really don't know what to do with them, because, for example, my generation, we were not there when they were taken away, and we also have a disconnect between our generations. But allow me to say that I commend all of you for coming to this webinar, and to just say that the Africa we want and the African we deserve will not be built by any other person except ourselves. So realization of Agenda 2063, however much it's the governments that and the member states have made the commitment, we also have a role to play on it. And I agree with many of you that the AFCTA is a game changer, but then the FMP, which is the Free Movement Protocol, is equally a game changer, because then this is what will guarantee us one passport. This is also what will guarantee us access. As an African, why should I pay visa to go to another African country? So that is just pretty much what part of the work that I do on a day-to-day basis, apart from reparations. So run a campaign called Borderless Africa, and I think I've put my email on the chat box. And if you do need to reach out, please feel free to do so. And I also want to thank all the speakers who spoke today. Your contributions are very valuable, like quite a lot of concrete recommendations that I really hope that the conveners will be able to take forward. And now I'm going to give back this meeting to Matilda. Matilda, if you can take it, then thank you very much. Asante sana, merci beaucoup, tout le monde.
Thank you very much, Ghana and Rose, and all the speakers. I will hand over to Juliet for the closing remarks. Over to you, Juliet.
Thanks, Matilda, and thanks for the moderation and all the active participation of the speakers. We really appreciate you for taking the time to engage in this dialogue. The conversation and the platform we have provided as an office and our partners of choice in the delivery of the theme of the year, which is on justice for Africans and people of African descent, is just the beginning. Our expectation is that from today moving forward, those who have been part of this conversation is to amplify that conversation and the actions that you take forward to make the changes that we all aspire for. Thank you for the constructive and perspectives that you have shared today. To conclude, I'll make maybe only three points to say that, the reflection for you on reparative justice is not only about symbols, It's about structural and legal as well as economic and social implications. And you have bravely articulated all those aspects, which also delve deeper even to include mental health issues that are always on the fringes. But we all ought to know that, being a human, a whole human, as one of the speakers indicated, requires that we are all whole and connected together. Healing is both collective and individual. It involves truth-telling, storytelling, education, as well as culture and intergenerational memory that we all need. Building the future requires unity. That's a partnership that we, after listening to you, we know that you're going to take it forward to look at how Africans and people of African descent from all regions globally, you can connect and move this agenda forward. Most importantly, our appeal is to make sure that you translate this energy you have into concrete actions. Taking action, it drives the agenda forward. And I will close this session by quoting a very inspiring quote that you may wish to take forward from Martin Luther King Jr., who reminded those who were part of the struggle years ago that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Change takes a long time, but it does happen. It might not happen tomorrow, but it's a process that you have to invest in and keep moving forward. And as per the ideas and the action points that have come through the conversation today, latching on what works. For example, the language, the art, the diversity that will drive this agenda forward. Take those actions as the key hinges that will move the conversation forward and also expand the involvement as well, that we need to include all. You who are able to be part of this conversation, as well as those who are in the rural areas, who are not able to be part of this conversation. But of course, as we are reminded, we are all connected. So we should continually, consistently work together in this endeavor. Thank you very much. I will close with an announcement. The Africa Dialogue series is a whole month endeavor for us. It's an advocacy that we take on every year as per the theme that the African Union has endorsed. And next week on the 30th of May, we will be now having the final deliberation on the series, which will involve the President of the UN General Assembly as well as the UN Secretary General. And it will also include the key policymakers from the African member states, starting from the President of Ghana, who is the champion for reparatory justice theme of the year for the African Union. So part of the calls that have come through, we encourage you to be part of that conversation. Register, and Matilda will share the registration link with you as well, so that you may also get the opportunity to participate and listen in to see what is coming to culminate in the Africa Dialogue Series 2025. But thanks very much, and keep up the energy and keep up the conversation. We appreciate you, and we look forward to connecting with you in the near future as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.